fueling the passion, igniting the light through highs and lows. We'll stand as one, a legacy, a tale that's just begun. Together we roar, together we roar. Detroit Lions will rise, with a heart full of dreams and the fire in our eyes. From the past to the future, we'll claim our road. In the home of the brave, we'll proudly have grown. So let's lift our voices, let's turn it up loud. For the love of the Lions, we'll always be proud.
Monday morning, Rise and Grind morning show. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Eric. What's happening?
Hey, you know what? I came out to the studio this morning and it was daylight.
Yeah.
First time in almost 4 months that I've come out to this studio and it hasn't been dark on my way out here. So that's one positive sign today.
It's encouraging, right? I noticed that the other day. Megan and I were doing something and I'm like, holy cow, it's still light out. It's like 6:30. And it just kind of hits you like, you know what? Spring is right around the corner, which means the combine is going to be here in just a couple of weeks. And the NFL draft, I mean, we're going to blink. It's going to be here. We got a lot of work to do. So this morning, I've got a little bit of a recap, kind of what happened, over the weekend. Obviously, the Super Bowl, big conversation. Defensive performance was outstanding by the Eagles. We're going to talk about a few things. I mean, I could already hear, what people are trying to say. I told you defense wins championships. I told you pass rush wins. I told you. Yes and no. Yes and no. This is the second time in over 15 seasons. And I called it before the game. There's no reason why the Eagles shouldn't win this game. And they did. I mean, I expected it. But there was much more going on to this game that I think that what meets the eye. And when you look at some of the, when you look at some of the interperspectives of how the Eagles were able to do this, what happened to the Chiefs, how come they weren't able to do anything at all, we're going to talk about it. And matter of fact, I think that this is a direct hit on Aaron Glenn and what he didn't do versus the Commanders and what the Eagles have done. We talked about a couple weeks ago, Michael Strahan and Tom Brady and what they said before the game, before the Eagles took on the Commanders. And it's the exact same blueprint that they have now followed. And it makes perfect sense. So we're going to talk about the Eagles generating some good pressure last night, my take on it, and why I feel nothing's changed for me. It's still interior pass rush. It is still cornerbacks are going to win the day. Interceptions, turnovers are the most important on the defensive side of the football, right? Why drafting defense makes the most sense. Kelsey's admission after the game, Kelsey's retirement, potential, what Patrick Mahomes had to say. I've got a couple of topics here from Riley. I don't know if he's going to come on at 9 or what he's going to do, but we'll see. Might get to his topics. Halftime performer was Kendrick Lamar. I don't think a lot of people really cared for his performance, but there was some other nonsense going on we'll talk about. And not Tom Brady. That would be Aaron Rodgers. We talked about Aaron Rodgers briefly yesterday, but we'll talk about Aaron Rodgers again today. So we got a few topics for you, man. We got a few topics going. Not a whole lot going on for the Lions right now, but we got a few topics.
Did you hear about what Tom Brady wore to the Super Bowl last night?
No, I didn't.
He wore a $740,000 watch.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm sure he's got more expensive watches than that. I mean, I watched this YouTuber, Speed. He comes on my YouTube every once in a while. He had a $3 million watch on the other day.
Jeez, Pete.
Yeah, there's some expensive pieces out there. That's for sure. If my watches break 1,000, I'm good with that. Like $1,000 on a watch is that's enough for me.
I had a watch custom built for me, and it cost me over $2,000, and I thought that was expensive.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy what jewelry's turned into. But some of the smarter athletes, they don't even wear real jewelry anymore. They just don't.
Yeah, it's all fake stuff. So they, if they get held up or something, then they're just giving away costume jewelry.
Exactly. I mean, why spend all your money on jewelry? It's pointless.
Yeah.
So anyway, let's just dive right into it. What did you think of the game overall last night? I mean, without getting into any detail, what did you think of the game?
Well, if you remember yesterday, we were talking with the goofy New York Giant guys.
Yeah, two goofballs.
Yeah, the two goofballs. And they were telling me how great the Chiefs defense was. And I was like, hey, hold on a second. Don't forget that Philly has the number 1 overall defense and, the number 2 scoring defense in the league. And they're like, but the Kansas City's defense is so much better. I'm like, no. And it was Philly's defense that won the day.
Sorry, I didn't mean to flip to that. I don't know what happened. My mouse must have bumped something. So yeah,
That's
Eagles
right,
defense definitely won the day. I mean, it was expected that they were going to have a good day, but when you look at the defense and what they've done, I mean, from back to front, they're completely loaded.
Yep. Now, just for 1 minute, imagine the Eagles defense instead of our defense. We win that Super Bowl going away.
Oh, dude, there's so much that we could have gotten done this year that we're still a young team. We're a really young team. We can't discredit the fact that the injuries are what finally broke the back of the Lions. Was that Meek goes down and that was it. I mean, it was game over.
But also, I think that just like you were saying, that constantly blitzing on every single play also caught up to us. It worked for one game versus the Vikings in week 18. It worked great. I mean, it worked to perfection, winning 31-9 against the Vikings. Worked great. But then the next week, you got to switch it up. You can't just keep doing the same thing over and over and over and expecting the same results.
Exactly. That's the definition of insanity. It doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Now, I guess I'm going to go through this topic and because I want to go into drafting, I guess, kind of with that and why the Eagles have done what they have done. So the Eagles generated last night. We'll start with topic number 1, which is the Eagles generated pressure on just 16 of Mahomes' 42 dropbacks. The kicker is this. They didn't blitz one time. Not one time. So Chiefs left tackle, though, Joe Thuney, he was thought to have been the puzzle solver, if you will, at the left tackle position when the Chiefs finally moved him from left guard with about 5 games left on the season. And he was manhandled last night. He looked all out of sorts, but he was manhandled repeatedly by that defensive front by the Eagles. Now, they got a little bit of edge pressure, right, from Josh Sweat and Nolan Smith. But it was the interior pressure last night that I thought had the best game from Milton Williams and Jalen Carter, and as well as Jordan Davis. That interior 3 was impressive. And they even, to your point, we were talking off tape here, that they even had pressure on 3 down linemen, instead of 4. Yep. And that should speak volumes to the interior defense and how they're able to create pressure without having to blitz. That's why the interior part of the defense is so important to me and has been for, decades in the game of football in the NFL. Some teams have gone to a 3-4 defense and it utilizes more outside linebackers. And I think that it kind of overshadows, the real reason of why you have an interior defense. Outside linebackers are great in coverage, right? They're able to get pressure on the quarterback. They're able to produce sacks, but their main job is coverage. It's coverage on, tight ends, wide receivers, anybody coming across the middle, obviously stopping the run. That is their first priority. The Eagles produced 6 sacks last night, which was one more than the Giants recorded in the 2008 Super Bowl. And it is also tied for the second most by a team in the Super Bowl history. 4 teams have 7 sacks in what were all winning efforts, right? So the most recent being the Los Angeles Rams victory over the Cincinnati Bengals just a few seasons ago. So Eagles generated 38.1% pressure rate, again, without blitzing one time. And this is against Patrick Mahomes. I've said it before. I'm not impressed with his legs. somehow he evades pressure throughout the regular season, or he gets a flag to help him. But last night, man, he just looked slow. And not only did he look slow at times, it looked like he was creating the problem by trying to evade through the center of the defense. Jalen Hurts was able to do it. He was able to evade through the center of the defense. But Mahomes, for whatever reason, when there was pressure coming up the middle, he would go through the middle. And he wouldn't look left or right. He didn't see, Josh Sweat or Davis, Nolan Smith coming through the center, coming right around inside the tackles. He didn't see it. And he kept getting sacked because of it. So, anyway, 16 pressures, 42 dropbacks, 38.1 pressure rate without a blitz. Impressive. This was obviously Mahomes' second worst performance by EPA in his lifetime of his career. He was minus 19.3. The question is this, though, Eric, and before I get to my main point of this, let me ask you. So the question is, why do you think the Eagles had so much success? And then I'm going to give you my take on how the Eagles defense did it from my purview and why Aaron Glenn really screwed up.
Well, I think they did it with proper personnel first and foremost. And like I said, there were times they were only rushing 3 and dropping everyone else back in coverage. There was no place for Mahomes to throw the ball all night long. No place for him to throw. Not until they took some of their starters out and were letting some second and third string guys get a few plays did Mahomes have a deep ball all night long. He threw that deep one to Worthy right at the end of the game. That was when it was second and third string guys, and they just weren't putting the pressure on like they were earlier in the game because they had second and third string guys in the game. The game was in hand. It was over. Less than 2 minutes to go in the game. And listen, I really think that it was a constant barrage of pressure from the inside, from their front 4, front 3 with it, whatever it was during that play, and everyone else just locking down the receivers. He had no place to throw the ball last night. None. Zero.
And that's the biggest part of this is, and that's going to be one of my major points, is when you have sticky corners and safeties and you can't throw the ball, and furthermore, you get into a position where you have to throw the ball, you're going to be in trouble. Before the game, I said, whoever takes away the run game and forces the other team to be one-dimensional, they're going to lose. That team is going to be able to win the game. And that's how the Chiefs had to stop Saquon. They had to stop Saquon, and they were forced to try to stop Saquon, but they couldn't stay sticky downfield. And Jalen Hurts would get a couple of good passes that go for some long scores or some big gains. And that's how the Eagles were able to maintain a lead and get an early lead. But I think it started with something early, which is something called turnovers. In the minute, and I'm going to ask the question in the chat. So when you get an early lead, offensively, you get an early lead. What is the typical defense that you're going to see coming out? Let's say you're up. Well, let's just say you're up 10-0, or 14-0, or 17-0. What do you think you're going to see from the defense? Actually, I'll ask you, Eric. What do you think you're going to see from the defense? When you get a lead like that early in an important game.
Usually, they're going to pin their ears back.
There you go. And so they didn't pin their ears back in blitz, but they did maintain their lanes, and they did put the pressure on Mahomes. They stayed true to their game plan. They didn't pin their ears back in blitz, but it did give them the opportunity to play a little bit more free. They stayed true to their game plan, which was we're not going to blitz, because the minute we blitz, Mahomes is going to be able to pick us apart because we're going to have too many assets freed up over the middle of the defense, and that's where Mahomes does his work. He's going to be able to get quick release on the ball. They're going to be able to gain 3, 4, 5, 6 yards per play, and that's when you start to lose the game. That's when it starts to spin out of control when you go up against the Chiefs. Or any team, honestly. I mean, it's the same thing that Jared Goff does to blitzing defenses, is he just starts picking them apart over the middle of the field. So let's walk through play by play and what really won this game. So the first possession for the Eagles ended up in a punt. Now, I don't think that there was any sacks. As a matter of fact, I'll just walk through it real quick. I don't see any sacks by the Chiefs. So Eagles punt the ball. And then the Chiefs get their first opportunity. They punted the ball in 4 plays. And again, there was no sacks. There was a missed pass short left to Worthy, an incomplete pass to Kelsey. And that was the other thing. Mahomes just looked terrible passing the ball last night. And then there was a short incomplete pass to Marquise Brown, and then they went ahead and punted. So then the Eagles get the ball back, and they go 7 plays, 69 yards. Little to no help from the run game, and score their first touchdown. So they're up 7-0 on their second possession. And then they get the second possession for the Chiefs, and they go 3 and out. Again, no sacks. There was no sacks at all in the first, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, at least 4 possessions to start the game, 0 sacks. Then the Eagles get the ball back. They go 11 plays downfield, and then what's his name? Jalen Hurts gets a little bit of pressure up his face, throws a wild ball that did not need to be thrown, and then that ball gets intercepted by the Kansas City Chiefs. So now it's 7-0 Eagles. We got our first turnover of the game. Well, off that turnover, you would expect Mahomes and company to be able to capitalize, put some points on the board, and they didn't. They went another 3 plays, and they punted the ball. But again, no sacks. No sacks recorded, at least right here. Everything that I'm reading, no sacks. So on the ensuing punt, Eagles get the ball back. They march down the field. They get a field goal. It's now 10-0. And then this is where the game changed. Kansas City gets the ball back. Rookie corner / safety Cooper DeJean picks off Mahomes in 3 plays on this drive and takes it to the house. The Eagles are now up 17-0. Now, again, the last score of the game for the Chiefs, come on, didn't matter. But this game was already won. It was done. That first interception by the Eagles for a touchdown won this football game. Wasn't sacks. Yeah, they were getting a little bit of pressure, but it wasn't the sacks that won this football game. Not in the beginning. You have to look at the score. You go score by score by score, and it's 17-0. The last score by the Chiefs, nobody's in the game. Next play, Chiefs get the ball back. They punt. Don't see any. Oh, so there's a first sack recorded right here on 3rd and 9 at the KC 31. Sacked by Williams. So interior pressure, interior sack. Eagles get the ball back. They punt. Then Kansas City gets the ball back. They throw another interception on the first play. Mahomes' short middle pass intended for Brown, intercepted by none other than Zach Bond, the guy that I mentioned a week ago that I thought would be a great fit for the Lions. I think his price tag is going to be way too high now, but he intercepts. So what do the Eagles do off of that interception? They march down. They get another touchdown in 2 plays. It is now 24-0. At that point, now the game is won, counting the last touchdown by Kansas City. So you had 1 sack, 2 interceptions, 1 for a pick 6, and off the second interception, they get a touchdown. Turnovers won this game for the Eagles. Sacks helped. They helped because at the end, after this moment in the game, the Eagles could really do whatever they wanted to do. They're up 24-0 at the end of the first half. It was really the second half where, again, this Vic Fangio style of defense did not squander, what they came into this game to do, which was to continue to not blitz and just get natural pressure. And that is the one thing that I've been talking about, Eric, for so long, that pressure and sacks need to come naturally. Mm-hmm. And they did. And they came naturally. Let's talk about why they came naturally. I'm not going to go through the rest of the second half. Obviously, we know what the Eagles did in the rest of the second half. They produced another 5 sacks. Kansas City they had no answer. They looked terrible. They looked slow. They looked all out of sorts. They couldn't move the ball. But it was those two key interceptions by Zach Bond and Cooper DeJean, one for the pick six, in my opinion, that won this game. That was 24 points. Even if you count the last score by the Chiefs, it's 24-22 at that point. So before I get into why drafting defense makes the most sense, what's your comments on the first half of the game there?
Well, like I was sitting at the end of the game thinking to myself, I wonder who MVP is going to be. And I'm guessing they're going to give it to Jalen Hurts just because he had some touchdowns. But I'm sitting there thinking, man, I almost think that the defense should get it.
Yep.
Just the defense as a whole. And I couldn't pick out any one person on the defense that I thought was, heads and above, tails above everyone else. There wasn't like one MVP. I thought, man, just the defense itself should have got the MVP for this game. And so
I wouldn't disagree with that. I mean, but we know that the quarterback seems to always get the MVP. And had Saquon gone for 100 yards and scored a touchdown, he probably would have got the MVP.
Yeah. And man, did they shut down Saquon last night? He didn't have squat. He ended up breaking the record for the most yards in a season, including playoffs last night with 2,477, I think. And so that was kind of cool, but he didn't have a big game. He was a non-factor yesterday. Really.
I thought he had over 2,500 yards.
Oh, was it over 25?
I think it was over 2,500. I mean, incredible season for Saquon. But again, I mean, the Chiefs' idea of stopping Saquon didn't work because we actually got to see, Jalen Hurts can actually throw the ball.
Yeah.
He threw a few nice passes last night, but big credit to their wide receivers. I mean, their wide receivers made some incredible catches, very focused catches. But again, my take on this game is going to be my take all season. Get natural pressure. You need pressure up the middle. That pocket was collapsing through the middle of the defense with Milton Williams and Jalen Carter. And then, of course, you've got Nolan Smith and Josh Sweat, Sweat as their outside linebackers up on the line the majority of the time. And they're coming around, one's crushing and one's, speeding around the end to try to force Mahomes up through the middle. And that's what they kept doing. They forced him up through the middle. And I just don't understand why Mahomes kept taking it up the middle. He should have went outside as many times as possible or tried to throw the ball away. But it was that interior pass rush that collapses the middle. And then the exterior pass rush forces them down through the middle, and you bottle the dude up with containment, and that's how they won this game. So, Aaron Glenn.
Yep.
In our last game against the Commanders, I was so livid at how he went after the Commanders because before the game, I said, we can't blitz this guy. We just can't blitz Jaden Daniels. He's the best quarterback against the blitz. Why do you think that your defense that is decimated is going to be any better than the Eagles defense, who wasn't decimated against the Commanders? They only lost the second game of the season versus the Commanders because Hurts was out of the game. So Aaron Glenn decided to blitz like crazy. And I'm glad that, we heard from Michael Strahan. We heard from Tom Brady, before the Eagles and Commanders game where they said, look, I'm not expecting Vic Fangio to blitz. I'm expecting him to contain. That's what they did. And if Aaron Glenn would have just done that, we might have had a chance. We might have had a chance to beat that team. But he wanted to be stubborn and stick to his philosophy of blitz, 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 and it bit us in the ass.
Mm-hmm.
And so then last night we hear Tom Brady talking about the back end of the defense for the Eagles and how important it was to have the Eagles defenders be sticky in coverage, which obviously allows your front four to be able to get some pressure. And last night we saw that. So how much time do you think Patrick Mahomes had to throw the ball last night? If you were to guess, I mean, you think it was a pretty quick sack, but what do you think it was?
I think it was about 3 seconds.
That's exactly what it was. So he had about 3.08 seconds, which is an eternity, right? You should be able to do something with the ball.
Yep.
Some of the faster sacks or some of the, faster time to throws, under 2.8, 2.7, 2.6 seconds of time, they have not produce the type of quality that we saw last night. And we're talking quality of sack versus quantity. They had both. They had quantity and they had quality by the way that they did it. I was impressed, with the Vic Fangio defense. As a matter of fact, I think that Vic Fangio probably deserves the MVP of last night because the hiring of Vic Fangio in the offseason as the defensive coordinator and then drafting defensive backs Cooper DeJean and Quinton Mitchell, I mean, they were probably the most important moves that the Eagles did this entire offseason.
So what? So both the offensive and defensive coordinator for the Eagles were new this year, correct?
Was Kellen Moore new?
Yeah, I think both of them came in this season, and
he might have been.
So it gives me hope with the Lions having two new coordinators that we can pull it around as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Jay-Z's got a good point. He says, don't let Ben off the hook because Philly's stuck with Saquon and the run, and Ben had Goff throwing 30-plus times. That's another great point, and I apologize. I'm not getting to all the chat this morning,
Yep.
and I'll come back to it. But, yeah, it's incredible that Ben Johnson didn't see what everyone else saw. Just run the damn football. Use your strength. What's working for you in that game, stick with it until it doesn't, until you're forced to do something, right?
Yeah. I have a little tidbit I'd like to bring up.
Sure.
So on your Facebook page, the Detroit Lions Truest Fan page, a certain gentleman named George put something up last night, and I just wanted to bring this up today. And it says, Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter, the two that weren't a culture fit here in Detroit, are about to get a ring before we do here. It's ironic. And I only say that because I listened to Jim Costa and others calling into 97.1 saying the same thing. And obviously Brad Holmes thought the same. It's just ironic. Well,
thought the same about what? They weren't culture fits?
That they weren't culture fits, and that's why we didn't bring them into Detroit. Because if you remember back, Jalen Carter was mocked to us. And
he had a bunch of legal issues heading into the draft, though.
He did.
Yeah.
And his friend died in some car crash thing.
That's not
whatever.
a culture fit.
No. And I think what this guy was trying to say was that he wanted Jalen Carter and he wanted Jordan Davis, and the Detroit Lions had the opportunity to take both of them and didn't. So,
but look at what players those are too.
Yes.
What are they?
Interior.
Exactly.
Defensive lineman. And so, I know everyone is going to be screaming for an edge in the draft. I'm not.
Well, the Eagles just proved my point again last night. They just proved it again and again and again. It's interior is the way to the quarterback. It doesn't matter who got the most sacks.
Yeah.
It matters how they affected the defense to produce. But keep going. I apologize.
And Aleem McNeil is not going to be back until October, November.
Right.
He tore his ACL. He's not going to be back. So we need a defensive tackle. I think that is our number one need in the draft, is a big boy. We need the biggest, nastiest, gnarliest dude. So who was the guy that I said last year with the big tree trunks? He went to the Seahawks.
Byron Murphy.
Byron Murphy. I wish we had Byron Murphy on this team. That's what I want. I want us to get a Byron Murphy this year. So I think when I do transfer over and start looking at people in the draft, that's the position I think that the Lions should target earliest in the first round.
So obviously with some of the mocks that I started doing last night, and while we were watching the game, I was doing some work and trying to kind of figure out, what is it going to take for the Lions to do X, Y, and Z. And the more I look at the front end of this draft, it does make the most sense, obviously, to draft defense. We know that.
Yeah.
But whether it's an edge or a defensive tackle or an outside linebacker, I think that the answer is yes, right? Whether it's one of those three, the answer is yes. It has to be one of those three. It just depends on who you're going to get, right? Like it depends if Brad Holmes, and this is another segment I can go into today, which is why I put Brad Holmes on the thumbnail. He has to solve this issue. and it's going to be the defensive front, not necessarily the edge. I'm okay with any of the three positions, but more so talking about why it doesn't make sense to bring in Myles Garrett and why it does make sense to use your picks to your advantage and try to do something different. So let me finish this one segment here on why drafting defense makes the most sense. So we talked about Vic Fangio, right? The new defensive coordinator, and then the drafting of the defensive backs, DeJean and Mitchell. And the Eagles had the ninth highest paid quarterback in the league. They had the third highest paid running back, the fourth highest paid tight end, the highest paid guard, the fourth highest paid right tackle, and the fifth highest paid left tackle. They're one of only two teams, including the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, that pay two wide receivers at least $25 million per year. Let me repeat that. They're only one of two teams out of 32 that are paying wide receivers $25 million or more per year. So the reason why I say that is if you think that J-Mo is going to get some crazy extension, he's not. He might get an extension, but it won't be crazy. Otherwise, they're going to move on. The Eagles have invested a lot of their money, a lot of their cap into their offense, which means they needed to get high-end production out of their defense. And they did. But they also don't make top market money. They don't make top market money because, very simply, they drafted the guys. So let's walk through the draft for just a moment. Might have to bring my pup out in a second. But let's walk through the draft for just a moment with who they drafted over the last couple of seasons. This year, they went 1 and 2, just like the Lions did. DBs, Mitchell at 22, DeJean at 40. Then they brought in Jalix Hunt, which last night I pulled up my sheet from last year and I showed everybody. Jalix Hunt got the highest score on the way that I evaluate players, right? I created my own spreadsheet with my own formulas. His score was a 40. That was the highest score out of all players. Jared Verse, Dallas Turner, they were, right there in line. He was drafted number 94 overall in the third round. Had a good season. Not great, good season. Then they drafted a running back. Then they drafted a wide receiver. And then they drafted Jeremiah Trotter in the fifth round. And then they got an offensive lineman. Then they got a wide receiver. Then they got an offensive lineman. Dylan McMahon was one of my favorite offensive linemen in last year's draft. Sixth round. The Eagles completely knocked their draft out the park. That draft was better than Brad Holmes, hands down. Last year, they brought in Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, and then they went Sidney Brown. Love Sidney Brown out of Illinois. Played with Kirby, I believe. And then Keely Ringo, Tanner McKee, and then Moro Ojimo, defensive end. The year before that, they brought in Jordan Davis, defensive tackle. Then they went Cam Jurgens, and then Nakobe Dean, and then Kyron Johnson, defensive. So out of the last three drafts, in the first three rounds, they went corner, DB, D end. Defensive line, outside linebacker. Defensive tackle, linebacker. 7 defensive picks in the last 3 drafts in the first 3 rounds. That is how you put together a defense. Before that, they drafted offensive line, and then they brought in Milton Williams in 2021 in the 3rd round. So when you look at how they're bringing in players and where they're finding these guys, Jalix Hunt's a 3rd rounder. Milton Williams is a 3rd rounder. Jordan Davis was a 1st rounder. Jalen Carter was a 1st rounder. Nolan Smith was a late 1st rounder, projected 2nd round, but they were able to get him in the 1st. So at the end of the day, the Lions can make some significant moves in 2025. They really can. With the draft picks that they have, with the capital that they're going to receive for compensatory picks, they can make some significant moves. So now that I've just kind of read off what they've done in the draft, I can only assume, Eric, that you're still thinking it's going to be a defensive draft.
I do. I do think we're going to end up picking up a wide receiver and a lineman, an offensive lineman. But the rest of the draft has to be defense. And if it's not, then I don't know what we're doing.
Yeah. Well, let me throw this at you. So Nolan Smith had 6.5 sacks on the regular season. Josh Sweat had 8 sacks on the regular season. Actually, that might have been the total season until last night. I think he had 3 last night. So it's not like these guys are putting up these gaudy numbers, right? It's a collective, what I call pass rush by committee. It has been the same thing that has been going on in the NFL for decades. If you research pass rush by committee, you're going to see that that term has been used forever. And there's a reason why. Teams that swarm to the football, teams that find a way to win, they get helmets on the ball. What I call the hive defense is never going to go away from me. The hive defense means that you're trying to get as many hats to the person with the ball as possible. You want to, like a beehive, you want to swarm them. But that means you have to have many guys making plays, not just one, not just 2. You need 5 or 6 or 7 guys able to make significant plays on your defense. So let's take a look at what Brad Holmes should be able to do in this upcoming draft. I just got to find my sheet here.
And one thing that kind of
got 5 sheets going, so
there's one thing that kind of handicaps us with this draft as well, and that's Aleem McNeil and Rodrigo. That's 2 positions.
Yep.
You have defensive line and then linebacker, where you have 2 guys that just aren't going to be there for half the season no matter what.
All right, so I do believe that, yeah, those are 2 key areas that we have to address, right? But Bruce Morton says, come on, Will and Eric, you can't not want them to get Myles Garrett. We be forever losing on defense because we're not getting anything through the draft. We are drafting position players we don't need. I would disagree with that, Bruce, and I disagree with that for many reasons, but I will just simply say we didn't lose this season because we didn't draft defense. We lost this season because we had over 30 injuries at one point in this season, and we lost everybody on the defensive side of the football. That's why we lost. If our defense stayed healthy, we're in this game. Without a doubt. Matter of fact, forget Aiden. Let's just say Aiden never got healthy, couldn't play. If we had Marcus Davenport healthy, Carlton Davis healthy, Amik Robertson healthy, and how about you give me Aleem McNeil?
Yeah.
We are in these games. Without a doubt. But we kept winning without all those guys. That speaks more volumes to me than not, right? That tells me that the Lions are doing something right more than they are doing it wrong. So I would highly disagree. You do not want to waste all that money. And to be honest with you, I mean, Diana Rossini came out, I think it was last night. Let me skip down to her segment real quick. What she said about Myles Garrett. Maybe I didn't save it. I'll just give you the Cliff Notes version. They're holding him hostage. They're absolutely going to hold Myles Garrett hostage and not try to move him. But they did say pay attention though, or stick around or something to that effect. I can't remember the exact term that they used. That they're probably going to have to move off of him at some point, right? They can't just keep him around and not get any capital back for him, but they already screwed up by not taking the 2 first-round picks they had last year. This Myles Garrett, breaking news from last week might force the hand of the Browns to accept less if all the other 31 teams are kind of in cahoots together to say, yep, we're not going to drive the price up. We're going to drive the price down if they can. If it was an extremely good deal, yeah, you bring him in. The only way that you can bring Myles Garrett in and have it work for you is, number one, he'd have to play on his contract the way that it is and not want a new contract. Even Aiden Hutchinson said this week, it doesn't work. It doesn't work bringing in all these extremely expensive guys on the defensive line. It just doesn't. So if Aiden's telling you that, forget about me. Believe Aiden.
Yeah. And there's something that happens to us as Lions fans, and I get it. Every single time there is a free agent, everyone wants to go sign that free agent, whether it's a running back, a quarterback, a receiver, a defensive lineman, an edge rusher. It doesn't matter. Every Lions fan wants us to run out and get every free agent. It just doesn't work that way. And in fantasy world, in Madden, going out and getting Garrett and saying F them picks for a year or two, it works great. But this isn't fantasy land. This is real. So I don't see where Brad has ever done anything like this. Why would he change what he's doing now? Why would he change his plan? He is trying to build something that is sustainable for the long term. He is not trying to build something to win short term. That just isn't in Brad's DNA, as far as I can tell through the 4 years of watching this guy draft and do things as a GM.
I mean, I absolutely believe at some point Brad is going to make a riskier move. I do believe that. I think that it is within him to be able to make, I guess, how do I put it? To make a splash trade or splash move, if you will, for the betterment of the team. But I think that would probably happen more at the trade deadline than during the offseason, only because of kind of what you just said. It's been his DNA to want to build this team. Our team has been crap for 6 decades. They're not trying to build a one and done. They're trying to give us something that is sustainable. Yeah, they absolutely want to bring a championship to Detroit. And that would probably solve 6 decades worth of misery. And then, if we kind of faltered for a few years, fans would probably be a lot more forgivable. But I guarantee you, if that happens, Dan and Brad would probably be gone because they're not going to want to go through it. And they're going to be able to get bigger jobs, better jobs elsewhere, more money, whatever. I just don't see Dan staying in Detroit forever. Maybe at some point when Jerry Jones isn't around, maybe he becomes a Dallas coach. I can't imagine that he wants to work with Dallas, with Jerry Jones' current situation, but he's a Dallas guy. He loves Texas. So that option's always open. All right. So where I was going with this is into J Mommy's point in here a minute ago. I don't know why Hendon Hooker's name keeps getting floated. Hendon Hooker's going nowhere. He's not worth anything. He's just not. And then let me explain why. So here's the deals that went down last year. Let me just run through it real quick. And this is just a few. The Vikings, they got first round pick number 10, where they picked J.J. McCarthy. They got a 6th round pick, number 203, and they selected their kicker. What they gave up to get that, they gave up number 11, so they moved one position, and they gave up round 4 and round 5 in 2024. And then another trade for the Vikings last year, they got number 17, and they gave up number 23. They also gave up a 5th, a 3rd, and a 4th in 2024 and 2 in 2025. So they gave up 4 picks to move up 6 spots, 23 to 17. Now, I'm not afraid of that deal. And I said it last night. Yeah. That is the deal that I'm eyeing right now for the Lions. If they're going to make a move, I think that if they can get into the top 15 or better, this is what they're going to be able to give up. This deal right here is going to be very close, except we're going to have to change that 4 to a 2 and probably that 5 to a 4. They're going to have to give up a 1, 2, 3, 4 to move up from 28 to 15 is what I'm expecting. And I'm not mad at that. I'm not mad at that at all. So then you've got the Lions trade. They moved up from 20, what were we last year? 29 to 24. And we gave up a 3rd round pick, number 73 of last year. But we got a 7th round pick this year in return. Not a terrible trade. I mean, I think we gave up, a little bit more than expected. I mean, we had basically 1,228 points that we gave up, and the Cowboys received almost 500 points better in the trade value chart. And then you got the Chiefs. So the Chiefs, they swapped 1st round picks. They moved up 4 spots, 32 to 28. And then they swapped 2 other picks. So they swapped a 4th for a 3rd, and then they swapped 2 7ths. It's not a bad deal, moving up 4 spots. It's actually a really good deal. But they gave up a 3rd and a 7th to get a 4th and a 7th. I think that's a solid deal. So I think that when you look at what the potential is for the Lions and where they're sitting right now at 28, what can they do? Well, here's my proposal, and this is why drafting defense does matter this year. It has to, because it's part of, I'm only saying this because it's part of my roster roulette plan. I mean, this is the year that I've been saying now for a couple of seasons that it's going to be defensive end, defensive tackle in the first or second round or both, because you have to put more in the hopper. You've signed Lee McNeil. You need to back him up with a cheap deal, which is a rookie on the rise. You are probably going to extend Aiden, at least fifth-year option, but possibly extend him before the season starts. You have to drop another one of him in the hopper. But we also need some really good football players, and there's a few really good football players available this year that could make a difference, even in year one. So with all that, I mean, Eric, are you in the mood to swap picks this year? You want the Lions to move up?
I don't know. I don't know what's available in the draft. I don't know if there is the interior defensive lineman that's worth going up to get, or the edge that's worth going up to get. I know this is not a QB heavy draft, so this is probably going to be more of a defensive draft, especially after last year going 16 picks in a row where it was all offensive people.
Yeah.
So this year might be a little different. This might be swayed more the other way a little bit. So
this draft's not exciting for, in my opinion, for wide receivers or quarterbacks.
Yeah.
In the top 15, it's not extremely exciting. If there's more than 5 picks in the top 15 that are quarterback, wide receiver, I would really be surprised. So to your point, I do believe that this is going to be a heavier defensive draft.
Yeah. Well, if you remember last year too, no one thought that 6 quarterbacks were going to go in the first round. Nobody thought that. And we thought like maybe 2, maybe 3, and 6 of them went in the first round.
Yeah,
so
I had 3. I had Caleb, Jaden, and JJ.
Yeah. Who knows though? I mean, I almost thought JJ could have fell to the second round.
And I think he would have had the Vikings not traded.
Yeah.
I think he would have. Possibly. I mean, then again, the Falcons could have snatched him up. Who knows?
Who knows? I didn't see Penix going in the first round.
No.
I didn't see Bo Nix going in the first round, but I personally thought Bo Nix was the best quarterback out of all of them. That I got to see anyway when we were down at the combine. Bo Nix impressed me the most, even though he was not the biggest guy and he looked like he was 40 years old. He really does. He looks like an old guy.
So here's where I'm at. The Panthers, when I look at trade ability, which teams are you going to be able to trade with? So the Jaguars, the Patriots, and the Panthers, they all sit at 9 draft picks in this draft. The Jaguars have 10, actually. The Bears have 9. The Browns have 9. The Raiders have 8. The Saints have 8. The Jets have 8. But when I also look at where teams are drafting, Chicago Bears are picking at pick 10. The Panthers are picking at pick 8. I do believe that this is going to be a little bit rich of a draft, capital perspective-wise, for the Lions to move all the way up to number 8 to leapfrog the Bears. But I'm not going to put that out of Brad Holmes' ability. I think that if he's going to make a move, he's going to want to fly in the face of the Bears and Ben Johnson. And I don't think he's going to make moves just out of spite, right? I don't think he's going to make moves when you believe in all the hype of, what Ben Johnson has done or hasn't done, while he's made his transition to Chicago. But let's just say, for instance, you want to move up to pick 8. That is going to require some serious draft capital. So I'm going to move off of pick 8. And I think that the Lions' best opportunity, given the fact that the Falcons probably want to get some draft capital back. They spent quite a bit of draft capital. They only have 6 picks in this draft, which, it's almost a full boat. But when you look at their draft and where they're picking right now, their first pick in the first round is number 15, I believe. Yeah, pick 15. And then after that, hold on here. After that, they have pick 35, and then they skip all the way down to 101. So there's some room there. They would probably want to add, a late second, earlier third, but definitely a middle to late second round pick. So how do the Lions get to pick 15? Yep, they're going to be picking after the Bears. It's expected, but I do believe that they can do it. So if they were to trade with the Falcons, I'm going to write this down while I talk about it. We're going to do it live. Falcons trade number 15 to the Lions, and the Lions give up. Now, just bear with me here, because you're probably going to be like, oh, no way. All right, they're going to give up number 28. All right, so they're going to give up this year's pick. And when I look at previous picks, who moved, from 23 to 17, the Vikings did. That's a lot further than 28 to 15. So it's going to require more draft capital. They gave up a fifth, a third, and a fourth to be able to do that. And that's why I said we're going to have to transpose, or we're going to have to change one of these draft picks. So I think the Lions give up 28. I think the Lions give up round number 2 in 2026. I think they give up round number 3 in 2027, which I think it's going to be a reach to be able to get a team to go out to 27.
Well, you could do 26, and that gets rid of one of our compensatory picks.
Yeah, and I think that they're going to give up round 3 in 2025. And so I would love to be able to stretch this out this way. You give up round 3 in 25, round 2 in 26, and round 3 in 27. So you've pretty much shipped away your third round picks and a second, but 2 of those third round picks are compensatory. One of those third rounds is a compensatory pick. One of them is in 27. Who cares? If they were able to pull that off, they may have to sweeten the pot with, another pick this year, but the Lions only have 6 picks, 7 with the compensatory. So and all of our picks are between 131 and 246 until that third round hits, which is going to be at the end of the third. So it's probably going to be right around 129, 128 or something like that. I'm sorry, yeah. I don't think my math is correct. It'll be right around 100 in that range, the compensatory pick, right around 100 or just south of 100. So we're not looking good to be able to stack the middle of this draft this year. So we're going to have to make some moves. I think that Brad makes 2 big moves. And I think it's going to be round 1. He moves up to at least 15. He gives up our first. And then he gives away 2 thirds and a second over the next 3 years. This year's third, next year's second, 2027 third. And then I think he's going to move up again, where he's going to move up our second round pick. So Lions are going to trade number 60 this year, number 195 this year, round number 3 in 2026. So those compensatory picks working them for us. And round number 2 in 2027. So that's number 60 this year, 195 this year, round 3 in 26. So both compensatory picks gone, working for us. And then round number 2 in 2027. So 2027, we will lose round 2 and 3. 2026, we will lose round 2 and 3. And in 2025, we lose round number 3 and round number 5. So I think that that's how the Lions can get that done. And then 60 is going to get traded all the way up to back to the Panthers. Nope, not the Panthers. Sorry. Patriots. Number 38. And I think if the Lions can pull those trades off, they can move up to 15 and pick at 38. I think that that's where you're going to be able to get some significant improvement, because you have to look at it this way too. There's no way the Lions, and I'm only saying this scenario here in place of Myles Garrett. That's it. It's only in place of Myles Garrett. So if you're not going to trade for Garrett, right, this is the only other way it makes sense to F them picks, is to move up into the draft. Snag some guys early in the draft and be done. So you move up to 15, you're going to be able to get Landon Jackson. You're going to be able to get, some of the other guys in this draft that make a lot of sense. For instance, the couple of guys that I've targeted that I think are really good ball players. Now, I'm not high on Mike Green. He's not even on my list right now in the first round. Jack Sawyer, he's another Aiden Hutchinson. Would you want him? Who cares if he's from Ohio State? Doesn't matter.
I don't care.
All right, so Nick Scorton, we talked yesterday with Thor Nystrom about Nick Scorton. Now, I did watch his tape last night. I thought he was pretty decent. Love the way that he uses his hands and knifes through the defense. But, Nick, you might be able to get at 28. So you might not want to move. But when you look at defensive line and the guys that we need to make a big impact on this defensive line, who are you going to grab? Well, I like Darius Alexander. Are you going to be able to get him at pick 60? I doubt it. So you're going to have to move up into the early part of the second round to grab a Darius Alexander. Are you going to be able to get Derek Harmon? Well, if you believe that Derek Harmon's the answer right now, you're not going to be able to get him at pick 60. There's no way. So both of those guys are going to go early in the second until we get to the combine, right? Remember, this is all pre-combine work. 90% of what I look at on tape has to be verified by what is done in the combine. So the only other guys that make sense early in this draft for the Lions to grab, where you may not have to make any moves at all. And that's why I said linebacker. I'm not afraid of linebacker. Demetrius Knight, love his work. Ezra Cow, love his work. Both of them are going to be game wreckers. I'm trying to find my defensive lineman here. I don't know where I put him. I do like Darius Alexander, early second, late first round. Shamar Stewart, edge, he's okay. I know more people are high on him than I am. I think Jack Sawyer is your answer for edge if you're going to jump up that high. And
I will tell you, I did watch part of the national championship game, and I did get to see a little bit of Jack Sawyer. The kid impressed me in the little bit I did get to see of that game.
Yeah, he's definitely impressive. Landon Jackson, the other edge. I'm more high on Landon Jackson than I am on Jack Sawyer right now. Only because of where the Lions are picking. If somehow you can land Landon Action Jackson at 28, you're winning. And if you can somehow land Donovan Ezrakow, you're winning. But anyway, I'll put more thought into this, and we'll break it down, as we get going through free agency and the draft work. But I did a couple of drafts last night, so let me just share one of my plays.
What position were we slotted this last draft in Detroit? Were
29.
29. So we went from 29 to 28. Okay.
Right. I don't know why these things won't open. Just open. Why won't it open?
See, myself, I have to answer a question. And that is, can I bring myself to put my hatred aside for 4 days to go to Green Bay for the draft? I don't know if I can spend 4 days in that city.
I probably won't. I might go to the first day.
Yeah.
That's about it. The combine is more fun to me.
Yep.
I don't know why this stuff won't open. It's like my computer is fighting itself. It just won't open. I got a way I can open it.
But after going to Green Bay to Lambeau for that Detroit Lions game last year, I just don't know where they're going to put all the people.
There's going to be a lot of tents.
Yeah, I don't know where everybody's going to go.
Okay, so I did a little bit of work last night. I can close this one. That one doesn't make any sense. So after making a bunch of trades, so I traded, I got the Lions up to pick 20 from 28. We traded 28. We traded 131, which is around 4. We traded 26 third. And we traded a 26 fifth. which again, I compared my trades with recent trades. So the dollars, make sense because the draft, the draft value, target value makes sense here. That would have netted us Jack Sawyer at 20 had Jack slipped to 20, which it's possible. And then I traded in round 2, I traded up to number 40 and I gave up 60 in round 2. And then I also gave up a 26 fourth and a 27 round 2. And that nailed us Princely Umeniaming. I can't even pronounce his last name. Princely U from Mississippi, another edge rusher. So you've got Jack and Princely, both edge rushers, right? But the difference is, these guys can also play outside linebacker. A little bit bigger of an outside linebacker, but then I went even deeper. Somehow I got Jay Higgins in round 6 out of Iowa, who might be one of the best linebackers in the draft right now. Highly underrated. And then I doubled that up with Jalen Walker out of Indiana. Somehow nailed him in round 7. No clue how that happened. Both of those guys are highly underrated, and I would love to see him a part of our linebacker group. And then Luke Newman. I grabbed a guard out of Michigan State. Again, not because of anything other than he was the best guard available at that time in round 7. He's highly underrated. I expect Jay Higgins, Jalen Walker, Luke Newman, I expect all of those guys to move up in the draft. And then my other mock that I did, it went like this. Donovan Ezra-Cow, edge, 28, without making any moves. Derek Harmon at pick 60, which I don't think is going to be possible. And then Pat Bryant. Pat Bryant is one of my favorite wide receivers in the draft right now as a mid-round pick, probably a third-round pick out of Illinois. I think he's 6'3", 210-ish. That bigger body wide receiver reminds me a lot of Tim Patrick. Obviously bigger, better than Josh Reynolds, more of a bigger body boundary guy, somebody that we still need on this roster. Especially with the loss of, who's the guy that we had last year that we lost early in the season? He was a late round pick.
Green.
Yeah, Green. So with the loss of Green, we're going to need to fill that pipeline. And I do love Pat Bryant. So anyway, we're going to do more work on free agency and draft. This is just off the cuff conversation today.
Well, Green is still under contract. He just got hurt, correct?
I'm pretty sure they did an injury settlement with him.
Oh, okay. So he's gone.
So I thought he was gone.
Okay.
So at the end of the day, look, it's F them picks. The conversation was this. It's F them picks for Myles Garrett, where you're going to give up 2 firsts and a third no matter what. I think that's going to be the buy-in price. Even if it's a first, a second, and a third. What can the Lions do with a first and a second and a third, or a combination of a first, a second, a third, and their own picks? So a first, a second, and a third of future picks and their own picks to move up in this draft. So it's either go all in, you go all in and you cash in on Myles Garrett, who's going to want $35 million a year in a new contract. That's not going to happen. It just won't. There's no way that we're going to pull that off. Not when you look at the guys that we have to extend already. But if you played under his contract and you had to give up 2 firsts and a third for Myles Garrett, I think that would be the dumbest move you could ever make. I also feel that if you take those 2 firsts and a third and combine it with some other future picks, and you move up into this draft and you grab the edge of the future, you grab the defensive lineman of the future, and then you find yourself a linebacker in this draft or 2, and you make it out of this draft with maybe 4 or 5 picks at most and have a highly productive draft, I think that is your best answer. And then leave yourself enough meat on the bone in 2026 to hopefully be able to regain or save a first-round pick, but at least a second and possibly a third-round pick, and then a fourth-round pick in 2026 and in 2027. I think it can be done. I do. I don't know that he can pull off the 2 big-time trades, but I think that he can pull off at least one that is going to net us either an edge or a linebacker or a defensive tackle that is really going to play well. So that's my goal for this year. Somehow net one game changer.
Do you think that Brad tries to get a game changer in free agency, though?
Well, that's the hardest part about this, talking about it right now. So that's why more of the work is going to be free agency over the next few weeks, because that's first, right?
Yeah, because people like Josh Sweat, he's going to be a free agent.
Yeah, too much money.
Yeah.
Zach Bond. I wanted Zach Bond because we need a really good linebacker. But again, right now he's playing in a Vic Fangio 3-4 defense.
Yep.
He's an outside linebacker. Do we need him? Sure. Was he that impactful last night? Well, that's that interception. I mean, that told you everything you need to know. That was a hell of a catch.
Yep.
I can't believe he snagged that ball. But it's gonna be too much money. And I think that when you look at the potential, every year it's like this, right? The Lions have to move off of one big, cap casualty, it seems like, or two that we always seem to have. And I can't think of one player right now that the Lions really have to move off of. DJ Reader? Zadarius Smith? I mean, do we really need to move off of either of their contracts? I don't think so.
No.
So I don't really see a major cap casualty coming by ways of free agency other than Kirby Joseph. Because Kirby's going to need a new deal.
But we still have him for one more season on his rookie deal.
Do you think he's going to play?
Why wouldn't he?
Do you think he's going to play? I mean, honestly, do you really think he's going to play?
He'll play under that contract.
I don't think he will.
No?
No. I don't think that he will. And to answer your point, whoever that guy was, where did it go? Eagles run a forefront. Yeah, it's a modified hybrid system. Lion King. It's a modified hybrid 3-4 system. So Vic Fangio's always run. They use three down linemen. They use 4 down linemen. They use all sorts of stuff. But to finish, answering this question, Kirby sitting out over contract. Yeah, I think it's possible. I mean, why would your agent tell you to do anything different? He was just the interception king. Why would you want to go play under a rookie deal that's paying you peanuts after you just snagged 9 interceptions? Now, I'm not saying I want him to do that. I'm just saying it's possible. And you got to think about the other side of this. And I brought this up a couple of weeks ago. Kirby's value is so high right now. That's the kind of big moves that you're talking about. Okay, If you really want Myles Garrett, then you're going to have to go trade Kirby on his cheap deal where he can go sign a new contract with somebody else. And hopefully you get a 2nd round and maybe a 6th round pick or something out of the deal. But at least a 2nd. You drafted him in the 3rd. You've cultivated him. You've developed him. If you can now get a 2nd round pick, at least for Kirby, and not have to give him an extension, now you're talking. Now you're in the draft with more picks. You could do more damage. You're resetting your future. You're resetting your cap number. And you already have Brian Branch back there. I went through the whole exercise a couple of weeks ago. There is not one team in the NFL that is paying 2 safeties top money. You might have one top tier safety, and your 2nd top tier safety is making about $5 million. That's like the most for the 2nd guy. I don't see that in Detroit. I see Kirby as a top tier guy, and I see Brian Branch as a top tier guy. Who are you going to want to keep? Do you want Branch or do you want Kirby?
So if you move Kirby, do you keep Melifonwu?
Exactly. Because he'll be cheap.
Yep.
And he knows the system, but you still have to draft somebody.
Yeah.
So you'd have to go draft a safety this year. You want to get young again at safety. You've got Brian Branch as your vocal leader. And look, it's not that I don't like Kirby. I love Kirby. I think he's a damn good football player. And again, I think it also speaks volumes to Brad Holmes where he's grabbing players that the media is talking crap about. Like, why are you grabbing Kirby in the 3rd round? Who's Kirby? And then he turns out to have a great season. Derek Barnes. Why did you grab Derek Barnes? Or why did you grab this player or that player? And then they turn out to be good, pretty solid players by their 3rd season, which is what you expected. And then that's where we're sitting now. So you've got to keep Branch. Terrian's obviously the future. Rakestraw is obviously the future. I still think you need another corner. I wouldn't even be surprised if we took J.D. Barron in the first round.
Yeah, if we drafted a first-round corner, I would not be mad.
I wouldn't either. But I think it has to be a different style of player than what Terrian is. I think they need to be good at man defense, but maybe someone that's even more aggressive. You know, that can a little bit bigger, a little bit taller, someone that can handle the bigger bodies.
Yeah, I someone like Carlton Davis.
Yeah, and see, I'm not mad at Carlton. I mean, look, great first year with him. I would love to see him back. I just don't think the money is going to be right enough.
Yeah, he's going to want money.
If there's one mistake that Brad made, you remember last year when they were asking Carlton, hey, are you going to get an extension? Are you going to sign, a multi-year deal here? And he said he was open to it. And Brad Holmes kind of pumped the brakes. Like, yeah, we're not there yet. Not saying we won't, but yeah, we're not there yet. So Detroit Lions bad guy says, oh yeah, let's go for cheap and keep iffy and get rid of good guys. Learn football, buddy, is all I'm going to say. And that's about as rude as I'm going to be about it. Because we're talking about things that are quite possibly going to happen. It happens every year to football teams. You can't keep everybody. So learn the way that football works. Learn the way that it operates. You're going to lose some good guys. I said it last week again. Sometimes you just have to be willing to let go. Right? It's just like being in a toxic relationship. You have to be willing to finally let go. And sometimes it is extremely hard because you love somebody so much. You've got this great relationship. You've got all these good memories. But then you have all these bad memories over here. And somehow they're just kind of evening each other out and you're just stuck in the middle. But once you let go, you feel this big weight just lifted off your shoulders. Same thing happens in football. You love this dude. He had a great season. He was on a good, cheap contract, still on a rookie deal. But man, he just had a crazy good year and he's about to cost you $18 million. Would I rather get rid of him and get something for him? Because here's what I'll tell you. The Matt Millen way was to overpay. The Matt Millen way was not to let go of guys, was to continue to bring guys in and continue to overpay and build up all this dead cap. That we're not in the Matt Millen way. We have to be able to let go. So did you bring up the point yesterday, Eric, talking about Hutch for Garrett? Was that you that brought that up?
Yeah. Yep.
So, I mean, ask people this morning, what would they do?
Okay. So if Barry from the Browns came to you today and said, straight up, contract for contract, player for player, we will trade you Myles Garrett for Aiden Hutchinson today. No draft picks, just contract for contract. Garrett will play his contract out on what he signed for it. We get Aiden Hutchinson. The Detroit Lions get Myles Garrett for 2 more years on that contract at $20 million per year. Would you take that trade?
I just cashed that check. 1,000%. I would take that trade. And here's why. It is not an indictment against Aiden Hutchinson. He's injured. You don't know what his future is. He's going to want $35 million a year. Everybody's clamoring right now. Gotta have Myles. Have to have him. Have to have him. So, very simply, do you want a proven commodity that's been doing it year in and year out? Or do you want a guy that's got, 5.5 sacks against a deplorable offensive line in one game, 3 sacks against the deplorable offensive line versus the Commanders? That stat padded his stats. If you really break down the tape on Aiden, you're going to see some deficiencies. You're going to see deficiencies with Myles too, but very few. Very, 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 very few. But player for player, if you're saying that Myles is the answer, then Miles would be the answer, and you swap contracts for players. And then what do you do on the other side? You draft somebody. Now it's just a thought, right? It's not like this stuff is being rumored. No one's talking about it. But
yep, just something I saw on the internet, and I thought that would be a neat conversation to have. Would you trade Aiden Hutchinson because Aiden Hutchinson has his 5th-year option coming up, so you could technically have him for this upcoming year plus 1 more year. So that's 2 more years you have him under contract on his rookie deal. Or you have Myles Garrett, and he's been a 6-time All-Pro, 8-time Pro Bowler. He's got his gold jacket all lined up, ready to go. Still in his prime, just hit 30 years old. Would you rather have 2 years of him or 2 years of Hutch?
See, and I think that's what you have to look at too. That's a good point. So that whole take includes Miles staying at his current contract.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
It's the what if scenario. It's the highly unlikely, to happen.
We haven't heard anything out of Myles Garrett whatsoever about whether he wants a new contract, whether he'll play under his current contract, what he's looking for. He's just said, "Hey, I want a Super Bowl. I want to go to a winner. I'm tired of playing for the Browns." That's all he said so far. And the Browns, they're stuck.
There was some rumors, and I don't remember who it came from, that he does want a new deal with the trade.
But he hasn't come out publicly and said that yet.
No, I don't think he's going to say it. It's going to be between his agent and the team.
But you got to realize too, the Browns are in a sticky situation. If they can't get that money back from the Watson deal because of his Achilles and him re-injuring it and trying to put him on NFI, if they can't somehow get that money, they are stuck, and they are going to have to purge. They're going to have to release people, and this is going to have to happen by, I think, March 1st, the first day of the league year, because they're going to have to be under the salary cap because they're over right now by 29 million.
Yeah, 29, 27.
Yeah.
So good statement in here by Full State Farms. He says, we got Pascal. We're good. We'll run it back with Davenport, broken leg Hutch, and torn ACL McNeil. See, look, guys, we're in trouble. I mean, the more you think, so you gotta have honest conversation, like with yourself. You can't be attached to a player because they played for your college team. You can't. This is the NFL. They don't have a Michigan emblem on their chest anymore or on their helmet. Okay, they don't. They have a Detroit Lion on their logo, on their helmet. They have Honolulu blue and silver and black and white on their jerseys. This is not a U of M team. So at some point, you do have to walk away from players if they are a cap casualty, if they're an injury casualty, whatever. I'm not saying that Aiden's not the guy for the future, but I'll tell you right now, he's not going to be a lifelong Detroit Lion. I guarantee you that. There is no way he will spend his entire career in Detroit. I don't think so. It'll become too expensive. Especially by the third contract. It'll be way too expensive because Hutch will be still in his prime, depending on if he gets a 2 or 3 year extension. But to Full State Farms' point, we're in trouble. We need a defensive tackle because Aleem's not going to start the season. What happens if DJ Reader gets hurt in OTAs or in training camp, and you haven't backfilled the pipeline with a defensive tackle? You're going to run it with Pascal and Pascal only and Broderick Martin. Look, Broderick Martin was never drafted to become a starting tackle in the NFL. He was drafted to be a rotational piece that could develop into something better. He was drafted to be a run stuffer and a hole clogger. He wasn't drafted to be Jalen Carter. And the quicker people begin to realize that and wake up to the fact that sometimes you draft players because of what you see for them as a future piece and a project, and that was the best player available according to you on your draft board, you can't play the hindsight 2020 game all the time. And if we did that, we'd all be geniuses. So you have to look at the state of our roster, where are we? What do we need? Well, we need 3 major pieces. Eric, take it away. I got to bring my dog out real quick.
Yeah. We need someone on the defensive line. We need a linebacker, and we probably need a corner. So this is going to have to be a very defensive heavy free agency period, and also in the draft. I think we're going to have to do some serious drafting in the defensive positions, and we have to stay healthy this year. That is the biggest thing out of everything. Once we get our players, we have to stay healthy. I don't know where all these broken bones came from. We had so many broken bones this year. I think that the Detroit Lions are going to have to get a sponsorship from a dairy company so all their players can start drinking milk. Because listen, I've never seen so many broken bones on a football team ever in my life. It's absolutely nutty, actually. It's very crazy. The ZZE show. I like that, J-Rod. That's pretty cool. Let's see. I'm not trading out, not in, says J-Rod. We only need a corner if we don't re-sign Davis. Yeah, to use a third round pick on a guy that you don't think can ever start for is weird. Yes, well, Project Martin, I think he was a project. Just like I think Manu's a project. And a couple other guys. It's just going to take time. Manu, I'll tell you what, man. If you were to go see him, like I went to every single Lions game, and in the beginning of the season, I get to every game 3 hours early, right? As soon as they open the doors, I go in, and I usually go down to the front row in one of the end zones, and I try to get as close as I can to the players and watch the players warming up and doing drills. And if you watched Manu in the beginning of the season and then went to the very last game and watch him again, it's night and day. He doesn't even look like the same player anymore. Physically, he looks the same, but the way he moves, the way he carries himself, it's totally different from training camp to the first game of the season to the last game, the playoff game. Manu looked completely different to me. He looked more confident, and he moved differently. The way he moved his feet, the way he moved his hands, it was completely different. He had to learn a completely new style of football where they played in Canada. You know, they're a yard and a half off of the ball. The defensive linemen are, so it's a much different version of football that he had to learn here in America. It's much quicker, faster, They're right on you. There is no pause to get your feet right. You have to be right, super quick, ready to go. And I think Manu might surprise some people the next year or two. I really do.
So I obviously I missed what you're talking about, but if you're talking about Manu and his transition, yeah, I think that Manu is definitely going to surprise. And again, it's Brad Holmes seeing the future for this guy and utilizing the impact of that body type, that body size, which is so rare to see.
Oh, dude,
he's massive.
His calves are bigger than my thighs.
Yeah, it's crazy. The dude's massive. So yeah, you look at Broderick Martin, same thing. The guy's massive, and he is an exact mock. Same size, same height, same arm length, weight, everything to another defensive tackle that is, I can't remember his name right now, but he's rated in the top 2 rounds of the NFL draft. It'll come to me later. But I just saw someone say something about drafting a guy in the 3rd round and thinking that they're not going to start is crazy or I don't know.
That's what I was talking about Manu for. Yeah.
Okay. So let me give you some straight facts on this. I know someone says that they like to come with stats and things of that. And that's me. Let's not get it twisted. There's only one person that loves to bring the stats and the facts. Now, I'm not saying that nobody else does, but that's been my mantra. I'm the stat guy. Ask Riley. Matter of fact, the first time he saw me, he said, I heard Will say, and I'm going to bring the stats. I keep stats around. I have to. It has to back up all my points, right? Eric, what do you think the percentage of starting value is for a third-round pick? Don't look it up. Just guess.
How many third-round picks are starting in the league, you mean?
How many third-round picks would start in year one of being drafted?
Year one.
Yep.
40.
40%?
Yeah.
Wow. You got high hopes, brother.
I just pulled a number out of thin air. 40%.
I know you did. All right, so here's the true number. Just from 2023.
40.1.
Here's the true number from 2023. Ready? 194 week one starters, almost 28% that were drafted in the first round of their respective drafts. This is all of the NFL. 194 were week one starters that were drafted in the first round. 28% of the league is made up of round number one starters. Another 143 starters, or roughly 20%, were drafted in the second round. And then another 107, or about 15% of the league, that were taken in the third round. So 15% of the NFL starters are made up of third round drafted players. That should give you an idea that obviously the first three rounds are the most important. And that is why I've always said F them picks for 4, 5, 6, and 7 and move up as much as you can in the top three. Now, to whoever said that in the chat, I didn't catch the name. I just saw the tail end as it was whizzing by. That's why you don't expect a third round pick to be a bona fide starter. I always looked at third round picks as being a high end rotational player, depending on who they are and where they're picked, but where they're picked in the third round. If they're at the very end of the third round, it's more unlikely than it is if they're picked at the top of the first round or the third round. So 15% of starters are made up from the third round. Now, when you combine all those numbers together, you got 15, 20, 35, 55. So 63% of the league starters are made up between rounds 1 through 3. 63%. Rounds 4 through 7 make up the rest of the league. Matter of fact, here's the numbers. Round 4, 77 guys in 2023. Round 5 was 52. Round 6 was 33. And round 7 had 18 guys. So clearly, it's the first three rounds that matter the most. Undrafted. This is what's nuts. In 2023, 429 undrafted players, more than 12%, reached the starting lineup. 12% of the league was starting from undrafted.
That just tells you it doesn't matter if you're drafted or not.
To a degree. I think it matters if you're picked 1 through 3.
Yeah.
1 and 2 more respectively, but
as long as you can play.
So I think that it's an issue when, people think that Brad Holmes makes these mistakes, and we went through it the other day. So if you weren't in the show where I went through the D line and redrafting this year, and I also went into redrafting with Broderick Martin, I went through that whole scenario. I guess for shits and giggles, let's go through it again. Do you have anything you want to talk about before we get into that?
Nope, we're good. Broderick Martin is a unique case and very interesting because even myself, I'm just waiting for this guy to do something. I think he was on the verge of it this year because he looked so good in training camp and then he got hurt in training camp. For 10 weeks, he really didn't do anything because of his knee.
Yeah, that was a big loss for him. You know what? He's going to have another year to transform his body, though.
Yep.
And where is he going to be, in what is going to be his third season? I mean, yeah, this is going to be the season that he's going to have to do something. As long as it is a rotation. And right now, Lee McNeil's out. So Broderick Martin's starting week 1 right now. He is. Or Wingo is. Or Wingo and Broderick and DJ Reader, assuming DJ Reader, makes the team. Those are your 3 defensive linemen right now with Josh Paschal.
So I'll ask you this real quick. What are your thoughts on the season that DJ Reader had?
As expected. As expected. Like I said from the beginning, he was not going to be a stat guy. He's a production guy. He helps others produce. That is exactly what he did. Now, when Aleem went down, obviously, he didn't have another power player next to him. But moving a power player in like DJ Reader next to Aleem McNeil, Aleem was having a good season. Aiden was obviously off to a rocket ship start. Davenport was as expected as far as a stat perspective and production perspective. If all of those guys were healthy at the end of the year, we're winning the Super Bowl. I guarantee it. We would have, but we'll never know now.
Yeah.
We'll never know. It's kind of fun to play the hindsight's 2020 game, but I mean, if you believe that Aiden's quick start to the season was just because of Aiden, it was because of two other things as well. Aiden's work ethic was number one. Number two, you brought in DJ Reader. Number three, you brought in Marcus Davenport, so you had to pay attention to the other side. But number four, yeah, he went up against some pretty terrible offensive linemen to start the season. He did. There's no way that you can slice it a different way. He did.
Yep.
So he had an easy assignment. He better have produced. If he didn't produce, well, then we got an even bigger problem. So I'm having trouble here pulling this up. Give me 1 sec.
Yeah, like I said, I'll be making bets for comeback player of the year with Aiden and defensive player of the year with Aiden. I see him having a really good year if we can get the rest of the line back to being what it was the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season last year.
I'm holding out on Aiden right now. I got to see this guy. I've got to see this guy hit the field and know that he's the same player.
I think he will be. I think this is an injury that you're actually stronger afterward than you were before.
I hope so, because he surely looked like he was still limping.
Oh,
yeah. Somebody that, a lot of people thought he was going to make the Super Bowl. He was not going to make it.
There's any way he could have played last night. There's none.
No. Okay, so here we go. Broderick Martin taken at pick number 96, 33 in the third round, number 96 overall. And so when you're looking for a player that you would have redrafted, right? Your redraft, who would you have taken? Let me just throw out some names. So behind Broderick Martin was Ricky Stromberg, a center, Siaki Ika, defensive tackle out of Baylor, Jake Moody, kicker, Trey Tucker, wide receiver, Cameron Latu, Alabama tight end, or Mekhi Blackman, cornerback for the Vikings. Yeah, Mekhi Blackman actually probably would have made sense. You know what I'm saying? Mekhi Blackman's had a pretty good run so far. But Siaki Ika, I haven't even heard his name, honestly, since he's been in the league. But he was the immediate defensive tackle after Broderick Martin taken. No thoughts, Eric?
No, not a player. I don't even know who he is really.
I don't know why this is not loading.
I was looking at something that popped up on my phone. The Sporting News put out a way too early power ranking. They have the Detroit Lions at number 7.
I'll take it.
Yeah,
we got a lot of rebuilding to do. Okay, so Siaki Ika, in 2023, he played 4 games. Has not played another game since.
Wow.
So it obviously wasn't Ika. I'm not sure of his injury history, but that must be injuries. Okay, so let's go to the 4th round. Who do we miss out in the 4th round? Jacorian Bennett, cornerback. Keely Ringo. So there's another corner. We needed defensive tackle. How about Dylan Horton, defensive end for the Texans? How about I did like this guy, Double A out of Northwestern, defensive end, Adamawia Adabore. I did like him, What does his stats look like? How's he been playing for the Colts? 6'2", 282. Anybody know?
Mm-mm.
All right, let's see here. So his stats so far through 2024, he played in 7 games. He had 1 sack. For his career, 2.5 sacks. Again, he's on the Colts. They're still in a rebuild phase, but that's it. That's all he's done so far. How about Dylan Horton from TCU, defensive end? He played in 16 games throughout his career so far. He's played in 29, and he has not logged a sack yet. Keep going down the list. Clark Phillips, cornerback. Colby Wooden, defensive tackle for Green Bay. 6'4", 273. He's logged 37 games. He's had a half a sack throughout his career. I mean, so far Broderick is the pick. If we're purely looking at defensive tackles or defensive ends. How about Cameron Young, Mississippi State, picked at 123, so 30 picks later. 6'3", 234 for the Seattle Seahawks. He's played in a career 18 games. In 2024, he did not play a single snap. He has 0 sacks.
And these are all guys picked behind Broderick, right?
Yep. Like I said, I've already done this before because I just got sick of hearing the whole hatred on Broderick Martin. But when you go and look at the draft, again, I'm already into the 5th round. So, again, we just went through it. Players in the 4th and the 5th round, they have less than a 15% chance of starting in the NFL.
Yeah.
It's even less than that. 15% was the 3rd round. There's just nobody. Jacqueline Raw, I mean, he was another one that, coming out of LSU. I mean, I kind of liked him, but his tape was kind of all over the place. There was questions on his motor, on his, his character was good, but that he was kind of lazy and he was very slow at the get off point. He's played in 17 out of 25 games. He's had 2 sacks through 17 games. So he might be the best option yet. And, he's way down the list. He's at pick 5, pick 5, 141 overall. So where did the Lions pick, though, after Broderick Martin? What did we give up? I can't remember now. Where did we pick after? Let's see here. So we picked again at 152. So between 96 and 152 is what you have to look at. What did we miss? So I've got 10 more spots to go. And that's it. There's no other. There's Mike Morris, defensive end out of Michigan, picked at 151, 6'5", 275. He's played in 5 games so far. 5 and 24, 8 for his career. No sacks. So I hope that answers your questions. That there was no other defensive tackle, there was no other defensive end that would have been taken after Broderick Martin was chosen. So
who did the Lions pick after Broderick Martin the rest of the draft?
So let me clear this up. Big M, we're talking about what if scenarios, and there's no comparison between Hutch and Broderick Martin. So your comment is useless, saying that I would want to keep Martin, who's done nothing on the field, but yet trade Hutch. I mean, come on, dude, get real. Let's just be real, be honest here. Pay attention to what I'm talking about, because I never said that. What was your question?
Who was drafted who did we take after Broderick Martin? Who was our 4th, 5th?
That was
6th,
Colby.
7th?
That was Colby Sorsdahl at 152.
Yeah.
So again, I'm sorry.
Colby might not even be part of this team next year.
Right. Again, the other thing you have to look at too, keep in mind, is when you get into these later rounds and you start stacking a team, Let's look at the things that Brad has done well. How many All-Pros and Pro Bowl players has he selected? More than 50% of his draft picks are All-Pro and Pro Bowl players. Pro Bowl, forget the game, right? Pro Bowl means something more than just the game and the antics of the games that they play within the game during that weekend. It's more than just the game. That is who is voted on by the press, the players, the coaches as some of the best players in the NFL. That's what that's for. That's all that means to me. The Pro Bowl does mean something, just not the game itself anymore. The game itself is a joke.
Yeah. A lot of the players in their contracts have escalators and things that if they make the Pro Bowl, they make a lot of money. Like Kirby, he lost out on $3 million this year because he didn't get named to the Pro Bowl.
Right.
He was named an All-Pro, first team All-Pro, but he didn't make the Pro Bowl, so he lost out on a $3 million clause in his contract.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
So, again, look, there's nothing else that I could say other than you would have taken a different position. If it wasn't Broderick Martin, well, there wasn't another defensive end. There wasn't another defensive tackle. It would have been a totally different position. So if we're going to say that it was a wasted pick because he hasn't played yet, well, you can't punish the guy because he's had an injury. I mean, Aiden hasn't won us the Super Bowl. He just lost the whole season. What have his sacks produced? Do we have a Super Bowl? No. So you've got to look at it from all perspectives here. And I think that when you look at pick 96 and later, it would have been a different position. I probably would have taken a safety or corner like Mekhi Blackman or I think Sidney Brown was already gone. I love Sidney Brown. Jacorian Bennett. Again, I haven't watched enough of Jacorian Bennett. Keely Ringo for the Eagles just won a ring last night. I don't know all of his stats. Let's take a look at Keely Ringo's stats. Now, I know that Keely was not mocked to us because of parent culture, issues or whatever. Let's see what he's done so far. And he was someone that I did like in the draft.
Do you think that Brad Holmes will relax his stance on that type of stuff eventually? Or is it only Brad Holmes kind of guys?
I think that that's a good question because I think when you're building a team, this Nike swoosh has got to go. It is just falling off. When you're building a team, rebuilding a franchise, you have to start with character, right? You have to start with identity of the team, the focus of the team, the character, all that stuff, the culture, all that stuff matters because you're trying to set a precedent for everybody that walks in the door.
Mm-hmm.
So I think in the very beginning stages, yes, that is your main focus. You have to reinvigorate the team, the franchise organization. You have to reinvent the wheel all over again. But yeah, at some point, like Brad has said, you can have one, Dan Campbell said maybe two guys that don't really fit because the rest of the guys that you've now brought in will keep that harnessed. They will keep it under control. So is it year 5 or year 6 that maybe you can have 3 players on a roster that maybe are a little bit more loose and kind of bend the rules a little bit? Because here's what happens. When you start to put those players on a roster that try to do everything right and they try to play the game a certain way, and then these knuckleheads are over there causing penalties because they're a hothead and they're getting 15-yard penalties after the play is done, that's what they're trying to protect against. They want the smart individuals that are just going to turn and walk away. They don't want the guys that are going to sit there and bait and cause problems for the team, lose 15 yards. You just got a first down, but now you're walking it all back because, you decided to jaw at somebody or throw a ball in their face, right? With JMO, stupid stuff. Or your touchdown celebration, stupid stuff, right? Those are the kinds of things you can't afford. You can lose games from that. So JMO is definitely one of those guys, and I'm purely basing this off of his record so far. He's one of those guys that is probably in that other category of fits everything that we want, but has some attitude issues at times that can get us in trouble. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I think that JMO has been our one, I'm not going to say bad apple, but he's been our one fringe player when it comes to attitude and everything. But I think that he is coming around to the proper way of thinking way more so than he was in his first and second year. I think he made a dramatic change this year. Now, the whole jumping into the end zone, grabbing your crotch and humping the end zone and some of that stuff and throwing the ball at Stevenson, that stuff's got to go. Just hand the ball to the ref and act like you've been there. You know, I didn't mind the dunking the ball over the goalpost and jumping into the crowd, that kind of stuff. Fine. I don't care about that. But I think he was our one player that was our fringe player. I'll call him a fringe player, right? He was the one guy with maybe the bad boy attitude. So if we had, but they've been working on him for 3 years now, and he's coming around to the right way of thinking, but he's still got that in him. And that's evident by some of the penalties that he's gotten this year and his 2-game suspension. You know, he finally hit 1,000 yards in a season. What could he have done with 2 more games?
Exactly.
Maybe he hits 1,200, maybe 1,300. Maybe he would have had the game of his life against the Jaguars. We're never going to know because he was suspended.
Yeah, he would have too. He would have.
He might have had the game of his life against the Packers. We're never going to know because he was suspended, you know, and that's just things he's going to have to learn. And I think he's learning them. And yeah, that's going to be an interesting one because his is coming up right now, him and Aiden, 5th-year options. It's going to be interesting. I think we do pick up his 5th-year option, but do we add another JMO to the team? Do we add another fringe player yet? Is it time? Can we do it yet?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess it depends on who's going to be left after free agency, but I do like Full State Farms taking here the Kobe Turner over Hendon Hooker. So Kobe Turner was very high on my board, very high. And I look, Hendon Hooker was the quarterback that I wanted. Had Brad not made some of the trades that he did, if you go back and redraft this, there's a few players that I would have loved to have added. You've got Byron Young, who went at 77 to Tennessee. You've got the other Byron Young that went to the Raiders at number 70. Hendon Hooker was at 68. You had, let's see, Yaya Diaby that went at 82. You had Kobe Turner, 89. So that's a huge, huge missed opportunity. And I think that when Kobe Turner went off the board, and again, we'll never know this, but I think that's why Brad did what he did. Because his guy was now gone. And then DeMarion Overshown went, and then Dorian Williams went, and then he took Brian, and then Jordan Battle went, which I think we would have probably taken Jordan Battle and Brian Branch. So I think that you have to look at what happened too, and that's a good point by Full State. Like Kobe Turner was my guy. You probably could have taken him in place of Hendon Hooker, and you probably could have taken Hendon Hooker at 96, which is where I thought that they were going to take him. And it just didn't happen that way. You could have flip-flopped both of those picks, and I think that we are in a much better position with Kobe Turner on this team. So, yeah, I mean, can you question some of the stuff that Brad does? You can, but I think the one thing you can't question is that if we severely needed defensive tackle depth, which we did, and we still do, look at this year. Levi was unproven. Levi wasn't even playing. Josh Paschal was barely playing. He hasn't been able to really do much until this season. You needed some depth. Ali McNeil was starting to come out of his shell, and he had a really good year last year. It just hasn't clicked yet for Broderick because he was stuffed down on the depth chart, and then he got injured. So you got to give him his third season. This is the season where it's going to make sense. And Broderick Martin was never going to be a starter. Like, he wasn't going to be 1-2. Broderick was going to be more 3-4-5. He wasn't drafted in the third round. I just went through the numbers. 15% or less of the starters in the NFL come from the third round. So that means 85 out of 100 players will not start in the NFL that are drafted in the third round.
But you know what people look at? They look at the way that Brad Holmes is drafted, and they look at Amon-Ra in the fourth round. Amon-Ra is an all-pro. Amon-Ra is a pro bowler. It doesn't happen every year. Brad Holmes got lucky. Brad Holmes hit an absolute grand slam home run with Amon-Ra St. Brown.
So let's go back and see what he did right. Penei Sewell, first pick he took, all pro. Best right tackle in the game, will be the best left tackle in the game when he moves over. Levi O had a phenomenal bounce back year in year 3. Injury history scares me. Ali McNeil. Did Ali McNeil get all pro last year?
Year before. Not this year.
No, he was building an all-pro season this year, and then obviously that injury sidelined his. So he's not an all-pro yet. But anyway, Penei Sewell, all-pro, one of the best tackles in the game. Ali McNeil has been a top 10 defensive tackle since the Lions have drafted him. Amon-Ra St. Brown, all-pro, top 5 wide receiver in the league. Derek Barnes, 4th round, slowly started to come around. Now he's in, final year of his contract, probably not going to stick around. Fetu Melifonwu, 3rd round. Again, a guy that has taken some time. He finally started to play a little bit better the last 6 or so games of last year. Injury sidelined him this year, and he wasn't able to do anything. Jamar Jefferson just never worked out. So in his first draft, he got 2 All-Pros, and I'm pretty sure Aleem has a Pro Bowl.
Yep.
Maybe. I'm not positive. But he got at least 2 All-Pros in his first ever draft. I'd like to know what other GM did that in their first year. All right, let's go to the second year. Aiden hasn't made an All-Pro yet. He's made 1 Pro Bowl. J-Mo is on the rise, hasn't made a Pro Bowl or an All-Pro. Josh Paschal, limited by injury. He's battling some things. They said it wasn't really related to cancer, but it was this year. But he finally started to step out of his shell. Kirby Joseph had his All-Pro season. So now he's got 3 All-Pros in the first 2 drafts. James Mitchell didn't work out. Malcolm Rodriguez started his first season. I think that's the other thing that people look at. But there's a reason why Malcolm started. There's a reason why a lot of these later round guys started, and I don't know if everyone realizes this. We didn't have a roster.
Nope.
We got rid of everybody. So everyone that we were drafting for the first 2 to 3 seasons was going to start. We didn't have a choice. When you walk into a season with only 20 guys signed, and you don't have any money to spend in the first couple of years because you're so upside down, you're trying to dig out and get to a level playing field. Everybody you drafted was going to start, and that's the way it was going to be. Win or lose, that's the way it was going to be. They expected to kind of throw away the first couple of years. They wanted to win, but you know what I'm saying. James Houston didn't work out. Chase Lucas didn't work out. So first 2 seasons, you've got 3 All-Pros, and you've got 2 All-Pros in the making. Aiden and Jameson. Year 3, Jahmyr Gibbs should have been an All-Pro. Hit a Pro Bowl. Jack Campbell, he's still got some work to do. Sam Laporta, best tight end rookie in decades until this year. Bowers, overcame what Sam Laporta did last year. Was Sam an All-Pro last year?
He was a Pro Bowler. Not sure about the All-Pro.
I don't think he did get it his first year, did he?
I thought he was a Pro Bowler.
He's definitely a Pro Bowler, yeah. Oh, no, he did. Wait. 5 players earned All-Pro. So Penei Sewell, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Frank Ragnow, Sam Laporta, Jalen Reeves-Maben. And that was last year.
last year. Yeah.
So there we go. We got our 4th All-Pro. Jameer should have been one. Brian Branch, we know what he's going to end up being.
Yeah.
He's All-Pro in the making. The rest of the team, Hendon Hooker hasn't had to do much. Broderick Martin injured the first part of last season, injured the first part of this season, didn't need to play. Colby hasn't really worked out. Antoine Green, obviously injured, gone. Okay, so we're now through 3 drafts, and we have Panay, Amon Ra, Kirby, Sam Laporta, and we have 4 All-Pros in the making on top of that. 4. That's 8 All-Pros selected in the first 3 drafts, with 4 of them soon to be. Okay, then we go to this year. We got Terrion Arnold, had a good season. Not great, good season. I mean, learning season, great season. Ennis Rakestraw didn't play. Giovanni Manu, potential left tackle of the future. He could overtake Taylor Decker this year. We don't know. Taylor Decker could be trade bait if Giovanni Manu steps onto the field, lighten it up. Sione Vaki, beautiful pick. Going to be an all-pro special teamer, maybe. That's a high maybe, or a low maybe, at some point. Mekhi Wingo, I think he played swimmingly good for being a 6th-round pick out of LSU for what he did in his first season. Christian Mahogany, again, played extremely well. What was that?
A++.
Right. So out of all these drafts, let's see what we ended up with. It was poop so far. Well, we can't really judge Broderick because he hasn't needed to play. He was, way behind on the depth chart, but an injury sidelined him his second year. Colby's no good. Antoine Green, no good, so that's 2. James Mitchell, that's 3. James Houston, that's 4. Chase Lucas, that's 5. Now, mind you, that these are all 5th and 7th and 6th round picks.
Yeah. You put Jamar Jefferson in there.
Yep, so that's 6. So we have 6 picks that haven't worked out, and they are all rounds 5 through 7. Broderick Martin, we don't know yet. Hendon Hooker, we don't know yet. I don't think you can ask for a better draft.
Yeah.
I don't really think you can. And I don't think that there's been another draft. Maybe you could hold it, next to the Eagles and say, yeah, I kind of like what the Eagles did. So, yeah, it would be a tall order, Lion King, as far as Manu replacing Decker. It would be a tall order. I'm just saying that you just don't know. We don't know. If Manu steps onto the field and has an incredible training camp and starts pushing, the defense around, the guy could. I guess let me ask you that, Eric. Were you impressed by Taylor Decker's play this year?
No. He had his worst year in a lot of years after we just re-signed him to a 2 or 3 year deal. I know he wants to retire a Lion. He's been great for so many years. He's the longest tenured Lion that we have right now. He's the only guy to come out of through the Patricia years and everything. So he's been here through it all.
Well, him and Ragnow, yeah.
Yeah, he's a great player. Just, I think Father Time might be catching up with him. He had that surgery in the off season, was supposed to fix him, and now he's played worse than before he had his ankle fixed. He let up a lot of stuff this year.
When you look at his grades overall, he's kind of hovered in that really good left tackle range, not elite.
Yeah.
Again, you got to take PFF with a grain of salt. You have to watch the tape. But when you look at his last season, he was a 77.2 overall, and that was, his 4th lowest grade. So he's had 81 and 82 and 81. So it's his 4th best grade as a Lion. Pass blocking, he's been pretty consistent in the high 70s. Run blocking, he's been, 2018 and 2017 were terrible, but he only had 4 penalties this year, which was good. Last year at 8, which I couldn't believe. So it's not bad that he only had 4 penalties this year. But I think when you look at his overall season, his grades are marginally okay, but his pass grade, let me get this key open. His pass grade, his PFF grade for pass was a 58.1. Before that, he was in the elite range of 90.5, 90.4, 90.4.
And that's what we need him to be. We need him to be up into the high 80s, low 90s.
There was some other stats here.
I like what Kevin says in here. Maybe Decker takes over for Hank Fraley when Fraley goes to take an OC job.
That's interesting.
Yeah, that'd be a good place for Decker to go to.
So he let up 31 pressures, 4 hits, 8 sacks.
Yeah, it's the 8 sacks that got me. Yeah. That's one every other game, basically.
Right. And only 4 penalties. So he had a down year, a very down year. And I'm surprised that they extended him the way that they did. Thankfully, it wasn't a ton of money, but it's movable. I just don't think that he's going to want to be traded to another team, and that means he would probably retire. I guess I haven't looked at his contract, but I can look into more stuff like that later on through the week when we get in through free agency and what we're going to be looking at as far as moves that are going to be made, and start digging into the draft. So throughout this week, we're going to start the process. So now I'll put the schedule together today, and we're going to start the process of running it all down. We might repeat some things, but we're going to run it all down. It is time for the Lions to look at free agency, who's available. Hopefully I'll get out some more videos today now that things seem to be working fine. And it's time to look forward to the draft, man. I'm excited, aren't you?
Yeah, this is the official first day of the 2025 season for me. This is the first day for next year. And they released the actual real logo for next season's Super Bowl. And wouldn't you know, the top half is Honolulu blue.
Are you looking at the one that was the fake one?
No, not the fake one. The real one that was put out by the NFL today. So it's got pink and blue and like a lime yellow in it. And the blue that is on the top right-hand side is 100% Honolulu blue. A very bright, vibrant blue. If you go to, On Location for the NFL, they have the new logo on all their stuff. That's the company that I use for the draft, because they sent me an email and stuff today about going to the draft. So that's where I saw the new logo. I did see the fake one. It's pretty darn close to the real one. Just the colors are different and it's blockier. So what did you think last night of what's called the bug for Fox last night, where on the bottom of the screen, it's got the numbers, for Philly and KC and the score and third down, first down, all that stuff. The graphic on the bottom of the screen.
I didn't hear anything about this. What are you talking about?
Oh, people were going nuts over it on social media, saying how horrible it was. They didn't like the blocky style and how big it was on the bottom of the screen.
I guess I didn't see that.
Yeah, people pick weird stuff to be mad about during the Super Bowl. I thought it was perfect. I thought it was great because I'm old and my eyes don't work the best. So I thought it was easy to read.
I'm still not seeing this logo.
No? Here, let me see if I can.
I'm on Location. I don't see anything about a logo.
Really? It was in my thing today. Let me see if I can. Oh, I just went past it. What the heck here? Let's see. Right here.
But I will say, just like just like people find weird things to get mad about. I mean, it's just like Lions fans. I mean, apparently we find things to bitch about when we've had the best season that we've had ever, and the best 2 seasons that we've had ever.
Yeah.
And it's like we are now spoiled. It's like we're just a few seasons removed from being the shit bottom of the NFL.
I just sent you a text too with that logo.
Oh, I would have loved to have found it online.
Yeah, it's from On Location.
I'm on location. I just don't see anything.
I don't know.
Yeah,
This is
that
the
logo
ad.
is not popping up on their website.
Oh, really? That's the email they sent me right there.
Let me check my emails.
Yeah, because they're starting to sell Super Bowl tickets for next year already.
Interesting.
But yeah, it's got pink and yellow and green, and then the whole top half is blue. There's blue on both sides.
Yeah, so let's be real. If this is legit, can you NFL on with location? That's on Facebook.
Yeah, that's off a Facebook ad. I just screenshotted it real quick.
So that's the NFL page. Give me 1 second. I want to show you what I'm seeing in this already. And of course, if that's an ad, I'm not going to be able to find it because it's not going to be listed in their timeline.
All right, I just typed in NFL 2026 Super Bowl logo, and USA Today has it as well, and so does Athlon Sports, and it's the same. Yeah.
Okay, here we go.
NFL introduces a conspiracy-proof 2026 Super Bowl logo.
Exactly.
Not that it will stop, folks. Yeah, it's got blue in it. That's all I need. Give me some hope.
All right, let me bring this in. I'll show. I'm sure everyone's looking it up now, but let me bring in video capture here.
There it is.
Okay, so here's what I see though. Let me blow this up. So you got on the right side, you've got the yellow and green. That's Green Bay.
No, that's Seahawks.
Yeah. And then on the left side, that's definitely not the Seahawks. On the left side, you've got the blue towers with the blue, clouds and the white clouds. So that what you have to look at here is, do any of those buildings represent a city?
San Francisco.
Maybe. Does it represent a city? Because we saw this bridge in the fake logo, right? What does that bridge remind you of?
Well, that's the Golden Gate.
Hold on. Maybe.
Mackinac Bridge.
No. Hold on. Let me see if I can find that picture. I don't know if I'm going to be able to find that exact picture. Oh, here it is. It's close, but not exact. What bridge is that?
I don't know.
Ambassador.
Oh, the Ambassador Bridge. There you go.
Yeah. And so when you look at the Ambassador Bridge and then that logo, could be very similar.
Yeah.
Could be. Because the Golden Gate is much bigger than that, right? Much different looking.
Yeah.
Let me just do one other thing.
It's pretty similar to the Mackinac Bridge.
Yeah, okay. So the Golden Gate kind of looks similar. Yeah, we're begging for something, aren't we? Like we are really trying hard. we are really digging deep on this one, everybody.
And if you look at the actual trophy there, you see there's some hints of blue in the like a shadow of the logo behind it with blue and pink. So it's kind of a reddish pink, and then you got the blue on there, and the blue is more dominant than any other color. So I'm going to say it's Honolulu blue for the Lions.
Oh, this thing's not working. Whatever. We'll just get out of it. Anyway, Hopium is alive. I guess. It's always alive. All right, back tomorrow at 8:00. We're gonna get ripping and roaring here on free agency. I know I already did like defensive line with Zach Bond. I did linebackers. I started talking about a few players like Trey Hendrickson, Myles Garrett, but now we're gonna dig into the things that really make sense, right? Brad Holmes has never really brought in expensive free agents. You asked the question earlier, when is he going to do it? Is he going to do it? I would still say definitively, without a doubt, we could do one, but I still don't think he's going to. I still think that he's going to continue to build this team and try to create sustainability, which is the most important thing you can build. I get it. I said it earlier. If the Lions win one championship, one Super Bowl, that's going to erase 6 decades of futility. But if we go back to being marginalized because we're strung by our cap, fans they're going to be pissed again. But I think it buys you a couple. I think it buys you a couple of seasons, So anyway, back at it, 8 a.m. tomorrow. I think Riley will be joining us tomorrow. We're going to be starting some new segments throughout the year. It's going to be, we got to change with the times. We got to take it up a level. We got to get it rolling. All right. We'll see you guys later. Josh or Eric, I'll hang out with you after.
All right.
All right. Probably go Detroit Lions. We'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.